Okay, one thing that I'm heading for with my little Hobgrots is I want them to feel like they are kind of planning an ambush attack. So rather than having bright, shiny metal, I wanted them to feel very black on the armor and subdued. But obviously, with it being black painted, they're not going to be the best at looking at it. Looking after it. So I decided to create a very simple, rough, damaged, scratched up black. And, I think I've done a reasonable job, and I'll show you how I've approached it. So I haven't gone too over the top, to be quite honest, with my colour choices either. We are talking about just contrast, doing a layer and, like scratching up and then just adding a final light touch to it. And then, where I feel there's a need for kind of highlighting, I'm going to kind of put a white colour. But again, I don't want to overdo that. Misplaced my white, there it is. Okay. But again, I'm not trying to overdo that. So I'm going to start off with Black Legion. And I'm going to do it over basically Mechanicus standard grey. So sprayed on, just want to go with that grey. I'm going to run the contrast over it. Black Legion is a nice, black contrast. Flows very easily over this grey. You can see it's just a very simple grey colour. Obviously, I'm going to do the whole armour in this black. You can see, because I'm going over a grey, it's kind of starting out with not a perfect black. I always like to think when I'm painting, well, where did they get the paint from? And I was trying to think, well, where would you get black paint from? Potentially in the middle of a swampy area, or, where would you raid or anything else? And I was thinking to myself, these kind of weird questions that you've got to ask yourself if you want to go for a theme. And I decided in the end that it's one of two ways. Either they just use tar, which would be, a very simple method of getting themselves some black, or they would obviously just, raid and pick up some black dyes from wherever. It's just these kind of little things that I think, if you can explain your, if someone asks you about your painting, you can just say, well, this is the thoughts that I was having. It makes you want to paint more. It kind of makes you want to learn how to paint better to get the effect that you desire. And, it's a great little talking piece. When people ask you, like, what were your thoughts behind the colour scheme? Okay, now you can see this guy. He's the noisemaker. He's got this kind of, heavy steel drum banging away on it. I think, obviously, it looks to me like the top of the drum is metal. So what I'll probably do with that is I'll probably just lead belcher that later on, and then try and make it coppery by rolling a contrast over the top of it nice and quick. That would just be a really simple way to do that, so it's not all one colour. Probably the same with this little emblem here. These sort of square ones, I might do them in a more of a coppery colour, just to break up the black and tie them in with the rest of the army. But I think it just makes sense to me. these guys try and get a bit of black going on, try and kind of hide themselves, ready for an ambush. They throw their explosives and then they attack. And then, I was thinking, well, okay, so but then why would they have like, a war drum? Well, of course, after you've panicked the enemy with explosives, if you start then smashing a drum very loudly, you're gonna really finish off their morale, aren't you? So that kind of makes sense as well. And that's what a lot of music was. It was to help keep step, but traditionally a lot of music is about intimidating the enemy. So, there we go. So I'm thinking, I'm always thinking, probably I think too much, probably I overthink my models. Do I care? No, because I enjoy it. Because you know what? What's the point of doing these kind of things if you're just gonna stick to, just the standard stuff, the standard, oh, this is this model, this is what it does, and this is its personality. Never gonna like that. I'm always gonna do my own thing. Okay, so there is our first layer of black on this. I think I need to do the internals of this drum. There we go, get some nice black on this drum. So yeah, the problem with black is obviously it can be very flat and disinteresting as a colour, particularly if you use too much of it. So it is just a fun little game about how you highlight it and how you actually make it look real. Anyone who's probably ever had a black car will tell you that every single little scuff and scratch shows up very easily. It's black, but it reflects the light in lots of specific ways. So there we go. Right, there's my first layer done, and as I said, I don't normally, obviously it's a contrast that I'm using on that first layer, but I do have the chaos black paint. Now it's got its place as a base, but it's also very thick and very heavy Abaddon black. So that kind of, this is slightly lighter I've found, and it flows on a lot easier on the first layer. I'd use that kind of Abaddon to maybe add layers later on to change the tone of the blacks, but in this case I'm not going to do that, because now I'm going to start heading into, getting this kind of a bit scuffed up now. So gonna get some of this grey out. And then this is where I'm going to start getting highlighting. So you'll see on this one that the aim is just to highlight, unlike with a lot of other things where I might put multiple layers of different colours on. This is going to be entirely about placing highlights. It's always difficult as well, I've found, deciding how much highlighting to do on something like this. You know, too much and it just turns to black grey. Too little and it looks too pure. Looks like, you know, too perfect field of black, which again doesn't really work. I said the idea is I'm not dry brushing here. This, you know, is very different to dry brushing. This is all about highlighting key areas. Points where the light's going to catch it. Points where it's more likely to get scuffed. You can see I'm using the side of the brush an awful lot. I should have probably put my magnifiers on while I was doing this, but never mind. And I add a few scuff marks to the main plate itself as I go along, you know, just to get it feeling like it's not well looked after. Whew, just checking actually something. Yeah, so I remember now actually I'm gonna obviously do a bit of coppering on these some parts, but that'll be something I do in the future. Okay, so I've got the first kind of highlight done there. And now I'm going to move to a lighter colour of highlight. And of course, to do that, I'm going to get a slightly finer brush. I'm going to put the other one layer on now. Now, again, this is going to be a lot less than before, and it's only going to really be right towards the corners. Bit too much on my brush there. You can see, like, I'm in quite a hot room at the moment, so my paint is drying far too quickly on my brush, which is not a good thing when you're doing these kind of highlights. Okay, so what we've got here is okay. Got a few scratches on. As I said, it's very difficult because the room is so hot. My paint is just literally drying on my brush as I go. I need to find a way to cool my room down. Okay, there. I think now I've managed to kind of get all the key points highlighted. Okay, so just one last little bit now, doing a bit of white just to finish off those absolute points. there we go. So that's how I've done myself some black armour on these Hobgrots, just to give them a bit of difference to the rest of the force. Oh, get that perfect. There we go, nice and sharp now. Yeah, I just think it adds a little bit of character to them. Makes them feel a bit different from the rest of the Cruel Boys. Gives them a different metal styling. And hopefully when they're all done, they're going to look, quite different. But, with little flecks here and there, like you can see the purple cloth on the back just to tie them all together.